Good evening and welcome to CYC News, the 17th of November 2013 and the 7th of Hatur 1729 AM. I'm Natalie Milad.
And I'm Juliana Bassoon. In today's headlines, His Holiness Pope Tawadros II ordains over 40 priests. Armed gunmen kill 6 members of a Christian family in Syria. Disgraced Toronto Mayor Rob Ford loses some of his political powers. And President Barack Obama announces amendments to fix the troubled Obamacare health law.
In our main story, His Holiness Pope Tawadros II has cancelled the celebration of the first anniversary of his enthronement due to the current situation in Egypt, preferring instead to pray at the Holy Liturgy at St. Mark Cathedral, asking Coptic people to pray for him. His Holiness also ordained over 40 priests at St. Mark Cathedral in Cairo.
دعوناك يا متى قسيس على المذبح المقدس الذي دعي للأرثوذكسيين في كنيسة القديسين جورجيوس والأنبا أنطونيوس بمصر الجديدة بالقاهرة افز ماروت انجيب ابن فمايس اواب امبراكليتو.
Supporters of the Muslim Brotherhood wrote offensive phrases on the recently repainted doors and walls of the Virgin Mary Church in Zaytun, Cairo, in the third consecutive attack on the church in recent weeks. The vandalism occurred during a march by Brotherhood supporters in front of the church following Friday prayers at Islamist-controlled Aziz Billah Mosque.
Still in Egypt, 12 supporters of Assad President Mohamed Morsi have been jailed for 17 years, each for their part in a violent protest which occurred last month. They were found guilty of thuggery, assault and sabotage at the Al-Azhar University, where the students were. Meanwhile, the Egyptian government has lifted the nationwide state of emergency, which included nightly curfews. The emergency laws were introduced in the middle of August, and amid the bloodshed and unrest which followed the army's removal of Mr. Morsi from power. It allowed the authorities to make arrests without warrants and search people's homes, but it had also been blamed for a fall in the business of Cairo at a time where the government is trying to create jobs and revive the economy.
Russian Orthodox Patriarch Kirill of Moscow and all of Russia has expressed concern over the plight of Christians in the Middle East, and especially in Syria. During a meeting with Cardinal Angelo Scola, Patriarch Kirill said, "I hope that Christians from different churches will work together for peace in the Middle East." Meanwhile, in Syria, armed terrorists killed 6 members of a Christian family in Syria's Saadad village. The gunmen shot the victims in the head in an execution-style murder after tying their hands and muzzling their mouths and then throwing them in a nearby well. The incident took place after Islamic militants occupied the village last month. Syrian Bishop Silvanus Butros and Christians remain steadfast and offer martyrs because they love this land and this country and want to stay in it. It's worthwhile noting that Syrian Christians have been subjected to continuous attacks, and their churches and monasteries have been the targets of acts of violence since the start of demonstrations against the reign of President Bashar al-Assad in March 2011.
Over to Canada, Toronto City Council has voted overwhelmingly to strip embattled Mayor Rob Ford of some of his powers. It is the council's latest attempt to rein Mr. Ford, who has refused to resign amid the scandals involving drugs and alcohol. In recent days, Mr. Ford has admitted using crack cocaine, buying illegal drugs, and drink driving while mayor, and also used lewd language on television. Toronto City Council voted 39-3 to suspend the mayor's ability to appoint and dismiss the deputy mayor, and chairs of the council's standing committees included the executive committee, which controls the budget. Mr. Ford and his brother Doug Ford registered 2 of the votes against.
US President Barack Obama has announced a 1-year reprieve for millions of Americans facing cancelled insurance coverage under his healthcare law. A contrite Mr. Obama said his administration fumbled the rollout of his flagship domestic achievement. But insurers who axe policies that do not meet the new minimum conditions raise doubts over Mr. Obama's fix. A separate issue with the law is the glitches plaguing the federal website set up to sell the new insurance. On Thursday, Mr. Obama said improvements to the website, which was launched last month, would be marked and noticeable by the end of November.
Florida authorities are searching for the body of a man who reportedly fell from a plane into the Atlantic Ocean. The pilot of the small aeroplane flying near Miami reported to an air traffic controller that a passenger named Geraldo Niles, age 42, opened the back door and fell out. The incident occurred at an altitude of 1,800 feet, nearly 2 miles from the shore. Search teams do not believe that Mr. Niles could have survived a fall from that height.
Officials in Saudi Arabia have said about 23,000 Ethiopians have surrendered to authorities since a crackdown on illegal migrant workers began in the oil-rich kingdom last week. The crackdown has led to clashes in the capital, Riyadh, with at least 5 people killed. Saudi authorities say they are trying to reduce the 12% unemployment rate among native Saudis. An estimated 9 million migrant workers are in Saudi Arabia and are said to make up more than half the workforce, filling manual.
Over to the Philippines, where the number of people confirmed to be dead from Typhoon Haiyan now stands at 4,460, officials say. The UN and local agencies have issued conflicting tolls, and the final figure is likely to rise still higher, as 1,187 people are officially still listed as missing. 1 week after the storm, food and supplies are now beginning to reach survivors, but aid agencies say the logistics of distributions are enormous. The Philippine government has defended its responses to the disaster, one of the strongest storms ever on land. In all, the council said more than 9 million people had been affected, including almost 2 million who have been displaced.
And in China, future families will be allowed 2 children if one parent is an only child, according to the Xinhua news agency. The proposal follows this week's meeting of a key decision-making body of the governing Communist Party. Other reforms include the abolition of re-education through labour camps and moves to boost the role of the private sector in the economy. The party officials will announce their plans well in advance to gain the consensus they need.
On to health, studies have found that mothers carrying babies skin to skin could significantly cut global death and disability rates from premature birth. This kangaroo care is an inexpensive and intensive care which experts say can reduce the growth of the 15 million babies born prematurely every year. This care helps babies breathe, and it is essential as lungs are immature until the age of 32 weeks.
A study found that depression can make us physically older by speeding up the aging process in our cells. Lab tests showed cells looked biologically older in people who were severely depressed or who had been affected by depression in the past. The findings in more than 2,000 people appear in molecular psychiatry. Experts already know that people with major depression are at increased risk of age-related diseases such as cancer, diabetes, obesity, and heart disease. This might be partly down to unhealthy lifestyle behaviours such as alcohol use and physical inactivity. But scientists suspect depression takes its own toll on our cells.
That's all we have for CYC News today. Stay tuned for more Christian content on CYC. I'm Natalie Malad.
And I'm Juliana Bassoon. From CYC Studios, Sydney, Australia. Good night and God bless.